And I asked them, who guaranteed the man they're going to guarantee me? How long will a fool hate knowledge? Never equate knowledge with intelligence. Let us get excited about our lives. The only thing that keeps me moving with my people, knowing that God is a just God. I got a mission. I want to make a contribution to this world. Spend more time helping people than I do running the business, but God will keep his word.
You have just heard the words of Dr. Joe L. Dudley Sr., the co-founder of the Dudley Products Company and world-renowned entrepreneur and humanitarian. My name is Jimmy Davies, founder of Every Black, and it's my honor and privilege to welcome you to the Dr. Joe L. Dudley Sr. Legacy Project podcast. As a child, he was labeled mentally retarded and suffered from a speech impediment, but his mother never stopped believing in him and was responsible for him overcoming these obstacles. In 1957, he invested $10 in a Fuller Products sales kit and created a company bringing in over $35 million annually. Along the way, he has mentored thousands, including myself, about entrepreneurship and has trained over 30,000 cosmetologists. Dr. Dudley's life story is a shining example of how to walk by faith and make your dreams come true. And that is why we have created the Dr. Joe L. Dudley Sr. Legacy Project to document and preserve his life of service and entrepreneurship. Please support this effort by subscribing to his podcast at www.joeldudleysenior.com, where you can see his awards, photographs, and hear the speeches, and also the interviews of those who have been a part of the Dudley family throughout the years. Thank you in advance for your contribution. Hello, my name is Jimmy Davies, and I would like to welcome you to the Dr. Joe L. Dudley Sr. Legacy Project, where we are interviewing the men and women that have been associated with Dr. Dudley and or the Dudley Products Company over the years. We're doing this to document and preserve the legacy of Dr. Joe L. Dudley Sr. Now, this project is sponsored by Every Black. Black is the new .com. And today we have the special honor of interviewing Dr. John and Rosie Raye. Hello, Dr. Raye and Rosie.
Hello. Good afternoon. How are you?
Hello. Good. This is the first time we've interviewed two at one time. So, but what we always do is start off with, we want to know a little bit about your upbringing, your childhood, where you were born and raised, and maybe Miss Rosie, would you like to go first, or
no,
just give us a look?
Together. We both was born in Louisiana, right. And he can tell you a story about him.
Okay. Well, we'll leave Dr. Raye.
Right. Born in Winfield, Louisiana, and grew up in Castor, Louisiana. And she would come by my house every morning and would say hello to our neighbor, Jessie. And I saw her, and then I was delivering the Monroe Morning World, the newspaper. And I did that. And I met her. She would pass the house every morning and speak to her neighbor. And I saw her and I said, well, I want to get to know that girl. And that was 80 years ago.
Whoa.
In that 80 years, 80, is it 80 months?
Oh, you're getting too far. He came up about 5 years old, 60.
Right.
But he was also,
60 years
we
ago.
both was
60.
born in Louisiana. We both went to school there, so we've been together
60
for years. Yes.
60 years.
But he had about, 9 brothers in Louisiana. And he went to school in Gibson, Louisiana.
Right.
And he left there and he went to Pinecrest High. And it used to be Wynn Parish Training School. And that's where he went grade school, and we both went to grade school there.
Grade school. And we met in high school, so I've been with her since 1965 now. It's been
Wow.
80 years we've been married. Is it 80? No,
No, you're 80
60,
years old. You're 80,
60
yeah.
years. I've been married. I had a stroke, and
Hmm.
that it's hard to speak because the stroke compromised my ability to speak correctly and to remember things. So I have to.
But he remember well Louisiana.
Louisiana, right. And Southern University, where the lady put us in the car and drove us from Winfield to Baton Rouge for, she didn't charge no money, but she took us on the campus and said, now, you stay here and don't come back until you finish. That was that was how we got to Southern University. Miss Lewis took us in the car. She took 4 students in the car and drove from Winfield to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and then enrolled us at Southern University and then told us don't come back here until you finish. And that's what we did. And
Wow.
we stayed at Southern University for all 4 years. 4 years at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And it was a hard 4 years.
And when he went to Southern, he had been doing his singing. He could do everywhere you went, he had a book with him all of his life. All of his life.
Right.
And when he got to school there, he was doing real well in it. But cum laude, he got his he graduated from there in the Southern University.
Yeah, with a 3.5 grade point
GPA.
average, and it was 3.5, which is
Because some teachers didn't encourage him to come to Southern University.
right.
Wow. Well, that's an amazing story. So they told you to stay there until you finish and don't come back.
Right. Don't come back until you finish. That's what she told us. And she enrolled us, and then she left and drove back by herself to Pinecrest High School. But Miss Lewis, it took 4 of us, and that's the biggest city we had ever seen was Baton Rouge. It was a big city, and we had never been away from Winfield before going there. She saw something in all 4 of us and said, you, I'm gonna put you here and enroll you. And then she enrolled us in school, and then she drove back to Winfield by herself. So I want to thank Miss Lewis for making that possible for us to get to Southern University. And that was the first time I had been away from home in all my 18 years. I had never been away from home for that long. And that was a good experience.
Oh, great. So after you all finished school, then where did you go? What did you do?
I went to work for the Albany Springfield High School, and I taught there until they put me off for integrating because they had been, Albany Springfield is about 1 hour from Southern University, and they had never had a college graduate in 40 years. And so I was there, and the principal, Mr. Theodore Green, told me I had to leave because I was wanting to march on the school board and tell them we can't take it no more. We couldn't take it no more. And they fired me in January. I had to go, and I went and I got a job driving a truck for a canteen service company. So I drove a truck after I had graduated cum laude from Southern University. I could not find a job because I had been trained to work and I didn't know anything else to do. So they put me off the payroll.
One of the things, we was getting ready to leave Louisiana anyway, because I had 1 year to complete college while we were there. And we were ready to leave because we was going to go to McMinnville And John and 4 of his friends was transferred to what you call that when you went to Minville. It was a called culture. What John was working with
Canteen Service Company. I was.
so when you moved and went to McMinnville, you had to work there. When
The
you guys
Department of
poured,
Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture.
when you
That's how-
poured, that's why when
Right.
you poured had to leave and
Right.
go assigned to.
Right.
They're assigned.
They assigned one to Idaho, one to Oregon, one to California, and they signed me to McMinnville, Oregon, the Job Corps. After I got out, I went to the Job Corps, and I stayed there for 3.5 years, and then I was there until they did not integrate, and there's no integration. But the Job Corps was good for me because I had to learn how to write, and I was able to write. And that's when the man from Film TV came by and said they were going to looking for a black person to be in television. And I said, I can do that. Even though I had never seen a television before in my life. I told them I could do it. And I went down and they put a camera in front of me and told me when a red light go on, read. And I read, and then they hired me with no experience. And I was the first black man in Spokane at KREM television in Moses Lake and in Spokane, Washington. I was the first black, and they had me to read, and I read, and I stayed there until I won a scholarship to Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism in New York City. And that's where I was able to go with no experience. And I stayed there, and then I went to television in New York and stayed there until I learned how to read and write news topics. And then I went to, after that, I went to Seattle, is where they hired me at NBC, the NBC station in Seattle. And I was the anchor man at KING television in Seattle.
And when he went into the news business, he went into the news business back in 19 probably about 67.
67.
And he's gone through Spokane, he worked there, and he also worked in Seattle, and then finally to Washington, D.C.
Right.
And so he was in the media services way back in 19.
Yeah, they had some black people, and out of Columbia University, they had all of the black people who was in television at the time, and so they sent me to Maury Povich was the anchor at Channel 5, which is WTTG in Washington, D.C. And that's how I got there. And then they hired me to do the weekend news with Maury Povich and Al Roker. Al Roker was my weather person. He was Al Roker, who is now at NBC, the Today Show. But he was at Channel 5 with me in the early 1960s and 70s. And Maury Povich was doing the 10 o'clock news. And then I did the 10 o'clock news. And we had a great going on until they told me that I was too militant. I was too militant. Too black. Right. I was outspoken. And I didn't realize that it was that bad at the time.
Now, I want to backtrack a little bit. So when did you two actually marry? I assume that Miss Rosie, you were along with this trip as well.
Oh, back there in, well, see, I was in school and I had 1 year I couldn't leave.
Okay.
We finished that year. So we went on and got married before we moved to McMinnville.
Okay. Yeah, I just wonder where that.
We were married before we finished college. We had married.
Okay.
And we had gotten married, and she was a junior, I was a senior, and she was right behind me. And so we got married and lived in student housing at Southern University. And Miss Miss Lewis gave us a place to live, and we lived there until we all finished school. And that was the way we got married. And while we were both undergraduates in still in high school. So that was 60 years ago. 60 years. All right. 60 years now. Right.
Wow. And so, okay, so I didn't want it to leave that out, but you were with, you say the Al Roker was your weatherman, and also you worked along with Maury Povich, right? But they let you go because they said you were too militant.
Right. They said I was
too outspoken. Now I don't know the whole story, but I know that also it had something to do with you were bringing the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to the city or something like that. Was that part of it?
Right. Yeah, I brought him. I brought Minister Farrakhan to the Washington D.C. and we drew 10,000 people, 10,000 at the place in Washington D.C. They wouldn't let me have no other place, so I went to the convention center in Washington D.C. and that was back in the early. Minister Farrakhan was not popular, and we had 10,000 people to show up to hear Minister Farrakhan. And that was one of the reasons why they did not renew my contract in the TV, because I was considered too hard to deal with. They wouldn't let me go to the news anymore. So that's why I got with Minister Farrakhan, and we've been friends for, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 years now. And
wow.
Right.
Now, also, is that the time when you started the Majestic Eagles?
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
In 1960 in Washington, D.C. Yes. And we opened a credit union. I raised $100,000 in one night. $100,000 to start a federal credit union. And it was the first credit union Black-owned in Washington, D.C. And that's how I met Mr. Dudley. It was at the Arnold Tyler. Was a student at Howard University, and he is the one that told us about Mr. Dudley. And so Mr. Dudley came. We was at the Howard Inn, a Black meeting place where we all had our meeting, and we met every Tuesday at 6:00. And we did that for, I don't know, until Mr.
That's
Dudley.
one of the reasons that motivated us to buy a building.
A building,
we
right.
were in the area. He had the Howard. It was the Howard Post.
Howard Inn.
And we used to do the renting, but sometimes you have to be work with. They'll say you're overtime. You got to get out of the building,
right.
Or something like that. So we didn't want to be in the habit, but they have to tell us to leave when we wanted to. So we wanted to go and buy our own house,
right.
Our own building.
Our own building. So we actually bought the building
and house too.
And we bought the building because we had to pay to have the meeting at the Howard Inn. We had to pay, and they would want the money before we could get out. And I said, we're gonna buy our own building. And so we raised enough money to buy the Majestic Eagles building in Washington, D.C. And we decided we were gonna open the credit union. It was the first Black-owned credit union in the United States, completely Black-owned. And that was in the early 60s. So we got the credit union started and decided we saved the Carter G. Woodson. Dr. Woodson's home was going to be sold for non-payment of taxes. And so we marched and said, we're going to knock Dr. Woodson, we're not going to let his house go up for sale. And his house was going to, we raised the $30,000 and paid off the back taxes. And we did all that in one day. And then we had the credit union. We said, we're tired of begging people for money. We're going to raise our own and start the credit union. And that's what we did. And we bought the building that Mr. Dudley now So we sold it to him in the early 60s, and now it was the Beauty School in Washington D.C.
Wow. Okay. So
Right,
wow. I didn't know that. I mean, I knew that you had the building. I didn't know that Mr. Dudley actually ended up purchasing the building.
right.
But I think also he was saying that Mr. Dudley would make that trip from North Carolina to your meetings every week?
Yeah, he
The-
came every every the second Tuesday in every month for 5 years. And that's why he would come there. And he paid his own way. We did not have no money to pay him. So, but we paid it. He paid it. He flew in from every Tuesday for 4 years, 4 long years. He would come and speak, and then we didn't have any money to pay him. But that's how we met. We're able to keep him coming to the Majestic
Yeah,
Eagle.
one of the things that he was, encouraging the business and by the getting out of the hotels and some of the things where he had ownership,
Right, right,
he would pay everything about to get to the meeting. The only thing that he had the responsibility was to pay his. He said, "Well, you got to be involved in something.
right,
Is to pay for our hotels."
right, right.
Okay. And so just to make the audience know, the Majestic Eagles, I know you met regularly, can you just describe the purpose of the group?
Right. We wanted to start a meeting that had a black-owned business. So
Okay.
we would had a weekly meeting every Tuesday night, and then we went from a Tuesday night to every Saturday morning breakfast every Saturday morning, and we did that for 4 years. That's how we got started with the Majestic Eagle and the credit union, and that was the first standalone black-owned credit union in the whole United States. Then it was a black-owned with no attachment to anybody else. That's how we started the credit union. And that's what impressed Mr. Dudley was that we were self-sufficiency with what we was preaching all the time. All the
Right.
time.
And while we started the organization as Majestic Eagle, we had a membership
Right,
meeting
right.
in order to, and at that time, for the $250 membership,
Right,
and for lifetime membership, it was like $1,500.
right.
And at that time, people were encouraging, participating in it,
Right, right.
and we ended up over organization in about 15 major
Cities, right. We had all over the country, and
California,
we went on Tony Brown's journey. That's how we got all over the
New
the
York.
world, the New York. Went to Tony Brown had a movie on called The White Girl. It's about her. And so we went on the Tony Brown Journal program, and that's how we grew. And we had a big chapter.
the movie that he was doing.
Right. It's called The White Girl. It's about her. And he was just, Tony Brown was instrumental in helping us to spread the word of the Majestic Eagle all across the United States. And then we went overseas. We went to London. We went to Africa. And we went all over the country, all over the world, and stayed in the whole thing for a long time. But it was a good run. And I was just really gratified to know how we had affected so many people. And we still got Majestic Eagles members now that are still with us. And it was a great run all over the country.
Wow, that's amazing. And that was before the internet and everything else. So that was amazing that you expanded all over the world without any of the technology of today.
Right. So internet didn't have no. The only thing we had was word of mouth. That was the greatest, and that's how I went with Mr. Dudley. He told us we had to go door to door. I had never done that before, but that's how I impressed him. Went door to door, and you had to go and take the product and get people to buy the product. And Mr. S.B. Fuller was the one who introduced Mr. Dudley to door selling. And S.B. Fuller was the first black self-made millionaire in the United States. S.B. Fuller, Fuller, and and he was from Monroe, Louisiana. He only had a third grade education. He never got past the third grade. But Mr. S.B. Fuller was the one who introduced Mr. Dudley to door-to-door selling. And that's how we started with Dudley products, by selling the Dudley products door-to-door. And that was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life. But seeing television, we had to go door-to-door. And you had to go door-to-door and sell the product. And that was one of the great things about Dudley products.
Now, is that what brought you to North Carolina from
Right,
Washington?
Right. We came to North Carolina working with Dudley products, and that was after we had sold a building in D.C. and then relocated to North Carolina. But it was a hard road to go on selling the product. People would not buy. We had to go and sell them at the door, and sometimes they wouldn't come to the door. And it was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life.
One of the things, John and I was anxious to get to move along in the Majestic Eagle meetings that we were having, because not only did he come to North Carolina, but he brought 60 personal staff people with him, and even like the guy that was the police officer, they were all types of
right.
Well, anyway, we, with our family and friends, we brought our family here and about 60 personnel.
Yeah, we bought to Dudley products. We probably bought about, over the time we was started with the company, we probably bought about, I don't know, almost 100 people came with us to Dudley products. That's
and
how
Mr. Dudley encouraged them.
Right. He was wanting us to. We brought the largest number of people to Dudley products from the Washington D.C. area, and one of them was Officer James Freeman. He was a D.C. police officer, and then he was
Lella Jones,
Sister Lella Jones, who is now with the Compo tax, who was a tax person, and we introduced him to all of the people that we met and were attracted to the company. So that's how we met.
They brought over 100 people to Dudley.
Well over 100.
Well, and I could be wrong about the story. Was it Miss Rosie? Were you a little hesitant to come? Did Mr. Dudley give you an incentive to come? Is that right?
Yes, I was. Yeah, I had a job there in the area, and it was a pretty good job, and I was kind of reluctant about leaving at the time, and so I said something was smart. I was going like, okay, well, if you want me to go follow to come here with you, then what did I tell you to do? I was telling you,
send me a ticket.
Yeah.
And he sent 2 tickets.
He said 5.
5 tickets, right? And that's how.
He said I was a security person, and he said,
oh yeah, all right. Right.
But anyway, he said that was great.
Well, maybe I could have my facts wrong, but I kind of going by memory myself. But I heard that was a car involved.
Right. It was an encouragement there.
Yeah, he gave you a Cadillac, is what I was told.
That's right, a white Cadillac.
So if you'd come to North Carolina, he gave you a white Cadillac.
He bought her a car.
The 5 tickets and a car too.
A car. He bought a ticket and a brand new car, and that's how we was able to leave Washington D.C. for North Carolina.
Wow.
The car was the motivating factor, though. That's what got Miss Rosie to leave Washington and give up her good job she had there in D.C. and we kept the car until we kept the car for a long time, but it was a good trade. That's how he got us out of Washington D.C.
So he bribed you.
Right.
So and you've been there ever since. And again, you blessed me by introducing me to Mr. Dudley as well, along with many others I know.
Right.
Would you? I guess at this point, would you care to share any stories with you have, Mr. Dudley, that, or anything that you want to share along over the years that stands out? Either one of you?
The fact that we met somebody, that we met him.
He was the first real millionaire that we had ever met. That was a real millionaire. I mean, he was actually had the money to go with the top. And he taught by example. And you had to look at. So I had to look at what he had done, and I said, if he and he had done all of this, and he had no training. He had just a burning desire. And that was impressive to see how Mr. Dudley had done so much with so little. And I said, well, we can follow this man. And I followed him until it was a long go. We go back now, I don't know, it may have been 50 years now. 50 years we've been with Mr. Dudley. Maybe 50, maybe even longer than that. Yeah, about 50 years, I think. We've been with Mr. Dudley. Been 50, at least 50 years. Maybe even longer. I'm not sure.
And the good thing too is when we met Mr. Dudley, he was doing some things. We ran into a problem while we were in the DC area, in terms of keeping our businesses going the way they should. And we were kind of taking it. Well, we weren't taking advantage of the people that real estate that own the real estate. They wanted to take the property because we had made the first $75,000 at one time, and then we had to do 100, and then we had to pay off it because we had a 3-year thing. And Mr. Dudley took a personal trip, and I remember that, to the DC area, and he met with his brother, and he told us, when he got back to his home, one of the things he said like he was going to take care of. That's why he sold this. And John just didn't want the property just to go to anybody.
Okay.
And Mr. Dudley told his brother, and I never remember to go like to go take care of it.
Right.
So the thing is that they paid $375,000 in order to get that to keep that building.
Right. We were going to lose the building, and Mr. Dudley paid off his brother, which is now the Dudley products is in the building right now. Even it's still in black hands right now.
Great.
But that's how we Mr. Dudley, we didn't want to sell the building to nobody.
Right.
That's how we got Mr. Dudley involved.
Okay. And again, like I know you've been with Mr. Dudley, really both of you, for quite a while, over 50 years. So I'm just going to ask any other stories that might come to mind that or even recent stories. Or I know also you're very active in the mastermind meetings and have been, and brought a lot of people to the meetings.
No, I think one of the biggest things is when they one day they were about to Carter G. Woodson.
Right.
We one time they were about to lose the facility for the they had everything for Carter G. Woodson, and they wanted to keep it as part of the historical place.
Right. But they was going to sell this house for back taxes.
Right.
Okay.
We raised enough money to pay off the loan, and then got the back taxes paid for. And he said, right now it is tax exempt. It cannot ever be sold again.
And then what you do, you put into the team. He put together a show Radio One now.
Right.
Oh, Kathy Hughes.
Kathy Hughes, right.
She
got together with John and some other people there and helped John put that money together in order to save Carter G. Woodson House.
Right.
And right now,
it's tax exempt. It can never be sold again. We got it tax exempt. The Carter G. Woodson home is forever at 509 9th Street Northwest in Washington, D.C. The Carter G. Woodson home is now a registered national trademark. It's on a landmark. It can never be sold again. And that's
Great.
how we were able to get it done. And we got Kathy Hughes involved in it, and she had Radio One, and we kept up the pressure on the Majestic Eagles. Is what we're responsible for all of that change that came about.
Yeah, it was WYCB, I think, at that
Right.
particular time.
And Vashti McKenzie, who is now the first Black woman to be the president. She's the first Black woman to be the bishop. She's a bishop now, and she was with us at WYCB in Washington D.C. But now she's a pastor. She's the first Black woman who is in the what is it, Mama? The Catholic. I mean, no, she's the first Black AME.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And also one of the ones that Donna remember is how we got some of the community people together and created a credit union.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't have a federal credit union in the area.
Right.
That we could, and we got together a good team
Right.
and decided, hey, look, we're gonna get I'll let John tell about the work, because he's the one that did a lot of the work.
Right.
I kind of helped out.
Well, it's the first Black-owned standalone federal credit union in the United States. The standalone, which means it's not associated with anybody else. It's standalone, which means that the first Black-owned 100% federal credit union in the whole United States, not associated with any other organization. And the Majestic Eagles is responsible for that. That's how we met Mr. Dudley with the Federal Credit Union. And it's still right now the only federal credit union in Washington, D.C. that's Black owned, 100% Black owned. And it is just one of the great works that the Majestic Eagles will always be known for.
Well, that's great. Now, there's one other thing that you're known for, Dr. Raye, and that's your reciting the poem Invictus. I don't know, how do you feel today? Do you feel like doing it?
Out of the night that covers me, black is the pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fair clutch of circumstance, I have not withered, winked, not cried aloud. My head is bloody, but still unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears, move, but the horror of the shade. And yet, the minister these years find, and she'll find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. I am Invictus, William Ernest Henley, 1875, Philadelphia. That was written in 1875 by Ernest Henley, and it is one of the most famous poems. And I decided that I'm gonna learn it, and it took me a whole month to memorize it. But I have memorized it, and now every night, right now, even now, I go to bed at night. It's the last thing I say when I tell Miss Rosie, I'll see you in the morning, and I'll see you in the morning. And that's what I tell her. But Invictus is one of the great poems ever written. And it was written in 1875, Henley. And that's how I ended it. And it's been part of my life now for all of these years.
And I know you've committed it to your subconscious, you said.
Right, to my subconscious mind. So I don't have to think about it anymore. I just close my eyes and I say the first line, and then the second line is given to me. The subconscious mind is something that we all need to learn how to use, because the subconscious mind, you don't have to remember anything anymore. It's all in the subconscious. And when you say it, it will come out. And that's how I was able to do Invictus. And Henley was a great writer. That's one of the greatest poems that anybody would ever find is the Invictus, which means unconquerable. Unconquerable. That's what it means.
That's beautiful. Well, Miss Rosie, I'd just like to ask you also, do you have any advice for the listeners? Any tips for success that either of you or Miss Rosie, I just give you an opportunity to share a little bit as well.
Yes, it would be about my book. Maxine got our book.
Right. Get Off Zero.
Get Off Zero, and we're getting ready to do 2 books. And they have the first one out, and she's responsible for putting it together.
Right.
And we get ready to, after a little while, we get ready to put on we're going to do 2 books this time. So we're excited about that. And we're working on that now.
And
the title you said is Get Off Zero. Is that
Get
right?
Off Zero. We're going to be doing 2 books.
Right.
Okay.
Book 1 and book 2. Get Off Zero. 25 ways to get what you want out of life. And it is a good primer on telling our story on how we were able to get off zero.
Right. And she did a lot of work on getting it started before John had his stroke.
Yeah. Right.
And she's working on it to get the other 2
Right.
books done. So we're gonna, our project is try to get them out by January. I mean, that's June.
Right.
By June. Okay. Well, when it's ready, I want to put in my order. You let me know.
She's our goddaughter. She's our goddaughter.
Okay. So in summary, is there anything that either of you like to share or about this project or Dr. Dudley, or just about your journey in life or anything at all?
Well, the good thing we've done, John is did a thing with John Lewis.
Oh yeah.
And he did we want to keep that piece of him in just forever, really. And he did that. He really did an interview with him.
With John Lewis. Mm-hmm.
John Lewis, right. The late Congressman John Lewis from Atlanta. And the interview is on YouTube now. Anybody can go on and just go on YouTube and then Brother Thomas Roy, who is somebody else that you need to know about is Thomas Roy. He's paralyzed from the neck down. He can't even move his nothing but his head. The only thing, but he's been paralyzed for he's in his late 60s now. But he's been bedridden since he was 31 years old. But John Lewis is the congressman out of Atlanta, and he was one of the great people in my life, and I'm very indebted to him. Mr. Dudley, John Lewis, and Brother Thomas Roy, and just absolutely awesome people, all the way around, awesome people.
Well, they say birds of a feather flock together, so that means you two must be pretty awesome yourselves.
Right. We've been together now, Brother Jimmy, for 60 years now. 60 years is the time we had married together. For 60 long years, 60 years, we've been husband and wife. But 60, yeah, that's a long time. 60 now. And
well, I know whenever we came to the meetings, if we saw Miss Rosie come into the meeting, we knew that you were right behind, or if you came in, we knew she was right behind. So it's just been a real pleasure to getting to know both of you. So I'm just going to go.
They always teasing us, they go like, okay, we see one, but we don't see the other. We say,
right.
Where's Rose? Where's John?
Right. Well, I'm gonna close there, but I really appreciate the opportunity to have this interview with you both, and for you to share so many things that's happened over the years. I really appreciate that. So again, this is Jimmy Davies with the Dr. Joel Dudley Senior Legacy Project, and today again we've had the honor of interviewing Dr. John and Miss Rosie Raye. So
and he has one thing that he wanted to ask you. He said, "Remember, you can see the blue." Tell him about that little story that you say about the Phi Beta Sigma. He's always got to say that.
Right. The Phi Beta Sigma, that is the greatest organization. And that's why I am a member of the Phi Beta Sigma, and it is the greatest fraternity that's ever been. And Brother Jimmy is a member of Phi Beta Sigma. So everybody, Phi Beta Sigma, Sigma Blue, Sigma Blue, Sigma Blue.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. So thank you again.